Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Enjoy your soup as I give this short presentation. I call them Building Beloved Community, Navigating Darkness and Fostering Connection. What we're going to talk about is how we can have this communal support in front of, in the midst of trauma, pain, and everything that is happening. How many people were blessed to be here last night? Pretty much everybody. I don't know what to say then, because I feel like she said pretty much everything. But let me give you some of my take out of the book. We're going to focus on chapter 2, which she called Please Hold On. Before I go into this whole book, I want to give you a story. There was a man who was a son of, bear with the language, you will know why. He was a son of a prostitute. Because of his status, his family and the community chased him away. They chased him away because they think this guy has no share on his father's inheritance. The poor man went to live as a bandit, and he became a mighty warrior and became a gang leader. When he became a gang leader, as you can tell, that was his way to survive and be able to keep going day and night. After some time, his community was attacked. There was a civil war. With the civil war, they knew what he was doing. They knew how many gangs he had. They knew what he was able to do. He was a mighty warrior. They came to him and asked him if he can come and fight for his community. He was surprised by their request. As a small boy, he was chased away from his own community, his family, his father's house. As you can tell, probably he was full of shame of his identity, how he came to be into this world, how he was brought. Maybe he had many issues about his identity. Maybe, I don't know what was going on in his mind. But as you can imagine, it was not an easy one. He asked them, "Are you not the one who rejected me and drove me out of my father's house? So why do you come to me now when you're in trouble?" And the elders responded to him, "Now we're here. If you can come back to us because we're turning back to you, and fight with us, and you will become head over us, over our nation, and you'll be the leader." Long story short, he returned back to his father's house, fought for his people. Meanwhile, this young man had a daughter. But before he went to the fight, he made a vow. He said to God, "If you made me win, if I win this battle, anything that will come in front of me, anybody who's coming in front of me, they're going to be a sacrifice." He fought, he won. Guess who came to meet the dad? It was the daughter. When the daughter came, he was crying, he was sobbing. And he had to tell the daughter the vows he made in front of God. The daughter was in pain, as you can tell, but he asked one request from his dad. He said, "Can you give me 2 months? I only need 2 months to go to the mountains and cry and mourn and just cry for my youth that is almost wasted because I'm going to die." He went to the mountains, spent 2 months with her friends. After 2 months, she came down, and she died. She was sacrificed to God because the dad needed to honor his promise and his vows. That is a story you can find in our book, in our Bible, in the book of Judges, in Judges 11. This story, you will know why it was the story that I wanted to share with you. And most people don't even know that story exists in our Bible. Some people don't even want to preach about it because it's a bad story. The funny thing about the daughter, there's no name. She's unnamed. They call her the daughter of Jephthah. We can't tell the name. One of the things I found in chapter 2 of the book, Browse focused on the importance of community, communication, connection, and how we can support each other in times of trouble, darkness, and loneliness and disconnection. One of the things she highlighted was the power of how community, when they're together, they can create this healing power that nobody can talk about. She argued that one of the deepest forms of darkness is not the physical, but the spiritual. A state of isolation, separation from others, that renders life devoid of meaning and purpose. That's one of the quote that I found so interesting. She mentioned that the deepest darkness is when one cannot even see their neighbor and therefore can join them in their suffering and pain. Once a person no longer feels the neighbor's pain, it renders them completely impotent. And down, she said, when we are unable to support each other in our suffering, our lives are stripped of meaning. I found this so fascinating and really, it hit me so hard because the way she talks about community, the way she talks about the beauty of the community, how when we're there for each other, we can be able to have healing, we can have the community. But one question that came to my mind when she talked about this was, how do we get to see our neighbor if we can't see ourselves sometime? Can we even see other people's pain when we can't even recognize our own pain? It's deep, as you can tell, but what gives us the privilege to see our own pain so that we can see our neighbor's pain? She emphasized one of the transformative power of genuine relationships and say how when people are willing to stand by each other's side, share each other's pain, and support each other, and challenge each other and confront each other, they can be able to heal. But the same question came, how do we see each other's pain if we can't even recognize our own? She talked about the book of Genesis, how God saw Adam living by himself, and God decided to make a helper. She used the term helpmate is ezel knegdo in the Hebrew, which highlight the fostering relationship where people can be seen, heard, valued for their complexities and vulnerabilities. And that's one thing she keeps talking about, how we need those people in our lives, how we need those people who can be able to be there, to be seen, to be heard, and to have that sense of community. She criticized how the social norms and the structure prioritize the individual me culture over the superficial connection. She also talked about how the pursuit of authentic connection, authentic human connection and belonging is one of the ways we can heal the world and heal ourselves. She invited people to be in a community that is rooted in love, trust, and shared purpose. And when you have those kind of community, she mentioned how it can help us to see ourselves in a collective community instead of see us as a me. She argued that some of the meaningful connection and community are let me paraphrase this. She talks about the loneliness as a plague that is in this world, and how we can be able to heal this plague is to have those kind of community. I have a question that I want to ask. As she kept talking about these people who we need in our life to help us to go through this life, she mentioned that the only thing to see as not good is loneliness, because we need those people who can be able to stand opposite us, who can see us, who can be able to look at us, who can be able to help us to feel, and we can be able to be like, hey, what's your pain? And you can tell people what's going on. So those are the people we need in our life. That's what she's talking about. That's the community she's talking about. And As she's talking about this, I had some few questions that came to my mind. I want you to have like 5 minutes before we come back to talk about how the power dynamics within communities impact the ability of individuals to feel seen, heard, and supported, especially during the times of vulnerability. And how can we work toward creating space of genuine empathy and understanding where everyone's experiences are valued and affirmed? We see there's a beauty of power, there's a power of community, there's a power of being together as people for this healing, what she's asking. But do we think we can be able to have those community without, don't you see some power dynamics in our community? Because as everybody's here, we are all God's beloved children, but do we have the same status in the society? No. Do we see things the same? No. There's some power dynamics, whether we like it or not. Maybe your job gives you some status and some power. Maybe who you know, who you see, they give you some sense of power. So if we know that there's some power dynamics within our communities, so how can we be able to have this genuine community she's asking when we are different? We don't have the same status, we don't have the same salary, we don't have the same job, and all the dynamics included. So I would like to have some people on your table discuss about how can we work towards creating those safe space she's talking about, where everybody's experience are valued and affirmed despite their status in the society, where they stand, how much they earn, who they are, who they know. You can take 5 minutes and I will come back to you. It looks like you're having a good conversation on your tables, but I will want us to come back to keep talking about this chapter. I hope you're having a good conversation on your tables. As she kept talking about the powerful healing we see in the communities, I feel like she really articulated the communal support and connection in navigating trauma in a beautiful way, but I feel like she overlooked some of the historical and systematic factors that contribute to this perpetuation of loneliness and disconnection. I think, that's me, that's my word. As much as it is so good to have those community, there's some of the historical and systemic factors that we can't ignore to have those kind of community that we want to have, because we need to acknowledge some of the power dynamics as we've been talking about in your tables, how those power dynamics and oppression have shaped some communities and individuals' experience and what they are allowed to feel, what they are allowed to see, what they are allowed to experience because of the power that I mentioned, also because of the systemic way things has been done. I feel like when we talk about interpersonal relationship and spiritual solution, as she talked in the book, we failed to address some structural inequalities and injustice that keep pushing this feeling of isolation and alienation among the communities. When we see how those, we are aware how those systemic injustice and power dynamics work in our communities, I feel like it can be easy for us to work on the beloved community that we want, that is inclusive, that is full of solidarities and support. In the story that I told you before, we can see how those systemic structures that has been placed has put some marginalized community down, because this poor man, because of how he was born, the Bible, we were in the Holy Book, it says, this is the son of a prostitute and a mighty man. Two contradicting words. How do you become a son of a prostitute, but also a mighty warrior? But also to be given this name of a son of a prostitute, it put him somewhere in the society. He's the lower class. He's not even seen as the son of Gilead. Because other people, they say the son of Gilead is the son of somebody. But this is the son of a prostitute. The mother was not even given the dignity that she deserved, even the son himself, which made him being pushed away from his house, his father's house. He ended up being homeless, let's say, unhoused people. It's the same thing that we see in our society today, where we see the structure and the power that is there, that puts people behind and experience and shape how they should experience their feelings and what is happening to them. As we're talking, we know what is happening in Israel and Palestine. That itself is one of the things we see how power and structures determines who need to be grieved, who need to be seen, who need to be, all these things that we're talking about. The other day, this poor man set himself on fire, crying for what is happening. The media has found a way to portray the story as someone with mental illness, as somebody who, and this is a man who was still serving the country, like a duty person. I feel like once we talk about this interpersonal relationship, as she talked about, we miss those bigger pictures, those power dynamics that are involved, how queer people are portrayed in the media, how people who are marginalized are portrayed in the media. And when we do that, we fail to have the grace for each other to be able to come together and have this inclusive community that we keep talking about. If this man probably has stayed in his father's house, I guess, he might not have ended up being on the street. If this man was seen as a person who deserved to be loved, probably he would have a family. Because nobody talks about if he had a wife, if he had somebody. We know he had a daughter, but nothing else we know about this poor man. The only thing that we know, he fought for his Israel. After he fought for Israel, he won. He sacrificed his daughter because that's what he said to God. He had a vows, and the poor kid died. There's so much things to focus or to talk about when you talk about having beloved community that everybody wants. There's imperialism, which is full of domination, exploitation. Who is the powerful? Which kind of territories do we need to own? And once you own it, it becomes yours. Nobody can fight you because you have power. You have big names. And those things has contributed to the fragmentation of communities and cultures, which has led to this continued disconnection and alienation of people within their families, also within the bigger picture as a community. We can talk about having interpersonal relationship when we put aside capitalism, the power it puts on our communities. It's about we need to work 24/7. You have to work hard, no work smart. You have to have 6 figures, whatever, to have a power and a status quo in our society. All this individualistic culture, this competition, the consumerism, keeps making loneliness epidemic, if I may say, stays here because I want to come here, get some money, because I need to stay here, I need to live, I need to work, I need to pay my rent. And if I'm doing those things to keep me going, I will forget my communities sometime. I will forget about those people who care as much about me. She wrote it in a beautiful way, but I feel like once we put aside those big fish, we tend to lose the bigger image because we tend to focus on our interpersonal people, our people. This is my people. This is my community because same race, same religion. We have something that is going to put us to have those people, but no like that genuine community that she's talking about. As she kept talking about this, she gave one good example that I loved, where she argues that as we try to mend our world and work together to have this beloved community that we want, our main job is not to preach as a rabbi, to preach a theology of love and belonging, but to ensure the communities strive to embrace the mandate. And this is their main effect, where the sacred mandate to hear each other, to embrace each other, to love each other up, especially on the hard days, to say to one another. Amen. Communities of love, belonging, spaces where even at our worst, our most vulnerable, we are still willing to show up and start working, trusting that our community, those circling towards us, won't look away. How can we have these communities when that's what kept coming to me? Because the way she talks about it, it's so beautiful, it's practical in so many ways, but I wanted us to look for the bigger picture, because for this genuine community we're talking about is there. As church, as people, we have to do something greater than looking for the people that we love, those who are there for us. We have to challenge ourselves and challenge the system, the systemic, whether it's racial, whether it's whatever that is, that where you have some sense of power, because everybody has power in one way or the other, and strive to challenge those systemic injustices that are there, that place people to stay in this loneliness epidemic that she's talking about. And as we strive for this belonging community, this is the same thing she talked about. Disconnection is a plague in our society, a plague of darkness. The antidote is rich, meaningful connection. We all need people who can meet our vulnerability with concern and care, to weep with us the night and to stand with us in the trenches, working with love to build a better world. As we use the power that we have to have this beautiful community that we want, I have a few questions that I want to ask. In what ways do systems of oppression perpetuate disconnection and loneliness and prevent the formation of a beloved community? If we find the answer for this question, because I'm still asking myself the same question, how can we challenge and dismantle the structure to create a more equitable and compassionate society? Is there any hope that this beloved community we keep singing and we want to have, that we can be able to attain it with all the structure that are there that can take away that kind of society that we want? As you take a few minutes to discuss about this and challenge me, if you think what I'm saying is my opinion, you're willing to challenge and tell me what you think is the best way, I would like to take some few minutes to talk about the ways in which privilege and power dynamics manifest within our spiritual communities and how we can work towards greater equity and inclusion. After seeing the bigger picture, there's some system of oppression that are there that keeps this disconnection and loneliness at bay, no matter how much we're thriving to have this beloved community. What are the ways privilege and power dynamics manifest in our own churches or spiritual communities, and how can we work together for this greater equity and inclusion? Thank you so much for your discussion. Is there any group that is willing to share any table that feels, who have something to share with us if you want to? Any group that feels ready to share or not? I like that, because that was the same thing that I was asking myself, how this is a book about loving, having a beloved community that everybody wants, and it gives some ways which I guess somebody is going to talk about on the chapter 5 about grief and leave. In the same chapter, she talks about how as human beings, we are so complex, but also we are capable of having two truths at the same time. We can hold grief and celebration at the same time. We can see love, but also acknowledge what is happening in the world. I think that is something beautiful among the practical ways she gives to have this beautiful, beloved community that we want, where we don't focus not necessarily on this is beautiful, this is positive. Let's only talk about positivity. Let's talk about love. Because for her, she feels like to have this beautiful community, which is something that I found so interesting, is that as people, we are capable to hold this tension. That is the things that we have within ourselves, where we grieve in 1 second, and the other second we are celebrating. Where somebody dies and you have somebody who's born. Do we celebrate the one who's dead? Or what do we do with those two? I think that is something that came to me when I was asking those questions, like, can we even have those big questions when the book is about beloved community? Do we even address those things? I like that because it's the same. That's why I was asking the question, to see if you think the same, because as she mentioned, we are capable to hold grief and celebration at the same time. We are capable of talking about love, the beloved community that we want, but also address those big questions that are beyond us, which is going to be my conclusion, where she talked about how this beautiful community she thrived to see. Because she also, in the same book, she criticized those societal norms and structures in the same book that focus on the me. This is about me. This is my way of doing things. That's how my parents raised me. And forget to look beyond yourself. That's why I was asking myself, what about those bigger things that are beyond us? Do we even have to talk about it? Or we just put it aside and focus on this beloved community that we want? How do we hold this much love and strive to have this beautiful community, but also have this tension about how those two can coexist in the same place? She asked one of the things that came up in ways we can have those human relationship and community bonds, and was that when you have those kind of people who can be there for us, she was asking, can you sit and do you have someone who can be there, someone who can see you, someone who shares your worries, someone who can ask you, who are you? What brings you here? Rather than, where do you work? This is the kind of community she's thriving, where we see our neighbors beyond where they work, those big questions. And as she gave us this space to ask those big questions, as she was asking the big question as well, I believe we are capable of building this beloved community that she's talking about. And as we build those beloved community, I feel like the churches or the spiritual communities are one of the places that we are capable of doing those things, because if you were here last night, she talks about the same thing. People who are affiliated in some of the religious setting are the people who tend to live longer than people who are not. And because she saw that kind of beloved community, she's advocating. But how can we take those beloved community outside of these four walls of the church to the place where we work, to the people that we interact with day by day, to have this beloved community? And one of the other things she talks about is that the best way to have those community is to create space that fosters not only inclusion, because we tend to talk about inclusion, but she talks way beyond inclusion. Yes, we foster inclusion, but also belonging, intimacy and authenticity, love and accountability. And for this place to be able to happen, and this community to be able to happen, she gives some of the hopeful things where we can be able to see every rituals, every service, every gathering as an opportunity for deepening this connectivity, this connection that we want. Where she asked people, and asked me, at least for me, where every single person that I'm going to encounter, do I see those people as a way to deepen this beloved community beyond my own people, beyond the people that I know, beyond the people that I work with, because that's how she sees this community to be able to happen, where we see every single service, every rituals, everything that we do as a way to deepen this connection. And she also talks about that for us to be able to get to that, we have to know that people are so complicated, multifaceted, wounded, beautiful people. And when we see everybody in this way that is beyond the binary, we can be able to see our differences and build and strive for the beloved community she's talking about. Thank you so much for listening.